800 Ram truck. Symptoms are that there's something wrong in the front suspension, a lot of squeaking, a lot of creaking and groaning. We just took it for a test drive. It's kind of nice out today. Temperature is about 60 degrees. We hear it a little bit. When the temperature plummets to down around 20, it gets dramatically worse. So we're going to lift up the front end, pull the wheels, and see what we've got. Okay, we think we've got a diagnosis here. We do believe that what's causing the creaking noise is ball joints, both upper and lower. The reason why we believe that is because the boots on both ball joints, upper here and lower down behind the spindle, are both wide open, broken. So we need to replace those. The way this upper control arm is sold, it's one assembly. Okay, sort of like that. So we'll have to take that apart. That's going to mean that the brakes are coming off, the spindle is going to have to come out, and we're going to have to sort of deal with that. We also know from having worked on this truck before, we replaced the center bearing hub assembly, and here it is. This side is now has a problem, and it's got some play in it. I don't have a lot of leverage here, but it does move plenty, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that at the same time. So we'll get into it. The lower bearing is actually, lower ball joint is actually pressed, and we've rented a tool to help us get the old one out and the new one in. So there it is. Okay, we removed the caliper and caliper bracket. There's only 2 bolts that hold that on there, and what we did was we started the car up and jogged the steering back and forth until we could get the impact gun on it, so that we had the room to actually do that. So it's only 2 bolts, here and here. Removed that, hung this, and now the center hub has 3 bolts that hold that on, and that is, in fact, we did the exact same thing, just back and forth until you can get it off. So now we're getting into the brass tacks of it right now, right? So next thing is going to be that we're going to remove the tie rod end from the spindle assembly, and that's the next step. Okay, to get the tie rod end off, I've tried a couple of ways to do that, and none of that has worked so far. So I'm going to the spreader tool. You can rent these at the tool house for a deposit. I actually have a set here that does a couple of things for you. One of them is you can hook them up to an air chisel like this, so it screws together, and we're going to show that here in just a minute. The other alternative is that it has a handle that you can screw into it and hit it with a hammer. We have the air tools, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Let me just assemble this thing here, and then we'll hit it with some air pressure and see how we fare. Got about 100 pounds of pressure on this thing right now coming through the air hose. Hopefully this will do it. Okay, so a little tough to come off, no big deal though. I had Sean put the camera down, and he stood on the trigger, on the air chisel, and then I shocked it right here, and then now we have separation. Spindle is now loosened up. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the lower ball joint first, at least the connection. Come off hard because it has a lot of Loctite on it. So a little bit of challenge getting that lower ball joint to separate. We actually had to stack the forks on top of one another until we got enough separation. Now he's removing the upper ball joint nut, and the impact gun won't fit inside of it, so we're doing it by manually, and it's going to take a little while to get that off, and then we are going to hit that again with the fork spreader and the air chisel. We ended up removing the upper ball joint from the spindle by attaching the hammering end to that spreader, and that shocked it and pushed the spreader in at the same time. Spindle's ready to come out now, so let's have a look. Be still a little tight on that bottom end, maybe.
It is.
Alright, so we'll get some spreaders in there and take that apart for its final removal. Okay, spindle's out. What we ended up doing was we doubled up the thickness of these forks like this, right? I hit it with air, and at the same time, Sean took the 3-pound sledge and he shocked the metal somewhere up here in this area. We're working on the blower ball joint, but that transferred all the way through, and then it finally broke loose. All right, 2 bolts on the upper control arm. Ba-bam. The upper cap of the lower ball joint, it actually appears to be an integral part of what we've got here, right? And we fooled around with this tool for a little while here to try and get this straightened out. And we watched another YouTube video and found that just collapses down. So if you've got your tool set right, and you start to put pressure on it, it's just going to push it right through. So that's kind of where we're at. We don't believe that we have this right yet, but we're going to try it here in just a second. So here goes. We spent about 15 minutes or so trying to figure out the actual tools and the right adapters and so on and so forth. This adapter appears to be the right size, but when we hold the old part up to it, or the new part actually, and try and fit it over there, this is too small. Our next step up is actually too big. However, it is going to clear the old ball joint. So when we start to come down with this on pressure, this cap here is just going to collapse down inside the hole. So let's do it and see what we've got.
Good shot, and I think we're starting to break away. Yep. See it going down into the hole right now. You couldn't hear it with the air compressor on, but there was a moment
just
you could hear it crack.
And we're using a breaker bar here to get this thing to collapse down inside. It's getting easier. I can see it going down. We'd originally tried to cut that off, and that wasn't really working to our advantage here because we didn't really understand the mechanics of how this actually works.
So Jeff, you would say there was a clear distinction when it finally broke through?
Absolutely. You're right. The air compressor was running.
But there is a moment in which it did crack. All right.
Okay, so like I said, we didn't really understand the mechanics of getting this thing off. Now we do. That works really, really well. So now what I'm going to do is take the big C-clamp, take this piece, make sure that I've got an adapter that's actually going to fit flush on here, right? Because now this whole apparatus is going to push it up inside the arm like this, right? So we've got this sort of this concentric deal here. That's going to go on the bottom of that. So if I do something like that, I come at it. So it's going to look something like that. And now I need another adapter on top. All right, we've had to get pretty creative with this universal tool. Actually had some stuff laying around the shop here that really helped us out. So this is how it goes. You got a deal looks like this. That goes underneath. The ball joint is pointing down now, don't forget. Then there's this spacer. That's the exact diameter of the ball joint. So that's gonna push it up, so we're good there. Then we have this other spacer because we need a little bit of room. But our problem is we didn't have enough room to stick another one of these in to drive down on, all right? So I laid this piece of steel across here, and this is where we're at now. So we're gonna try it, see if it'll pull that ball joint up inside of its home. Takes some serious pressure getting this thing up in. Look, the steel here is bowing. Looks like about an 1/8 inch piece. Alright, so we have finally gotten this thing in here. The rental tool did a really good job of taking it out after we figured how it worked. What it does not do very well is put it back in, and we really struggle with that. I'm going to make a long story short is that the piece the spacer that goes over the top of this is the exact diameter of the ball joint itself. So that is your only option, right? You've only got a couple choices here, and one of them isn't good at all. So that's what we ended up doing. So now a snap ring goes on this guy, and then that ball joint is essentially going to be installed, and we can get back to some of the easier work that we've dealt with. Okay, Sean's in the process of putting it back together. We've gotten both the upper and lowers handled. So upper, lower have been attached. He's tightening them up right now, and then the tie rod went back in. The tie rod spun on us when we tried to tighten it up, so we got a wrench and held it here, and then tighten the nut up, and that's how we got it to stop spinning, and it's that one's ready to go. Recall in the beginning we had to replace the hub on this side. It's the only reason that we took this off. Oddly enough, this side does not have an ABS sensor on it. The driver's side actually does. It kind of messes us up on parts, and in fact how we thought this was all going to come together. We had to do a part swap. You know, hey, it happens. So we are in the final stages of putting this whole thing together. The lower ball joint has a crown nut in it. Crown nut meaning that it will accept a cotter pin. So we tightened that up as much as we possibly could with air pressure, and then we backed it off a little bit until the hole was revealed and we could slip the cotter pin in. So that's all been taken care of right here. And that's how it goes, right? So now that we've gotten the hub I believe it's loosely installed, we'll go ahead and tighten that up, and then we'll put the brakes back together. That's the hub assembly going on. Getting tightened up?
Absolutely.
All right, looks good.
Nice and tight.
Yeah. Rotor and then the brake caliper. Okay, caliper went in. We did remove the frame, not the caliper from the frame, but the entire frame itself. So it was only 2 bolts that hold that in. The vehicle needs to be aligned now. A couple adjustments have to happen. One is the camber, which is wheels in this direction. Caster, which is upper ball joint relative to its lower ball joint. And then the towing, you saw us remove the tie rod in. So all those adjustments need to be made in addition to the steering wheel and whether or not it is straight or cocked or so forth. And that'll happen at a shop on an alignment rack. Thanks for watching.